I don't even know how to start.
So basically, you ever hear stories people forgetting to pay on a date, or they were late, or something went wrong, or their mom dropped them off or something like that? Well, my first date with my wife was one of those where afterwards you're like, that girl will never speak to me again. And we got married. So here's what happened. Also, this video is not going to have anything to do with the military or the Air Force. Just a heads up on that one. Fall 2014, I meet my wife, okay? We were introduced to each other by a mutual friend. I came over, I met her on the recommendation of my best friend's mom, who had run into that day, I think earlier that day, is September of 2014. And she's like, hey, you need to meet Danielle, who's my wife. She's this awesome girl, blah, 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 and because she'd grown up with my friend. I agreed politely. I was like, oh yes, ma'am, I'll totally go over there. And I did, because I wanted to see my friend that afternoon, that evening. So I go over, and I'll never forget, I opened the door, and my wife was sitting on this breakfast bar that was in this apartment complex. And my first thought was like, holy cow. And she's like, hi, and I was like, hey. And I don't really remember how we started off. She says that I started asking her a ton of questions. And that's, I don't know why I fall in that habit. Like, where are you from? So what are you studying? Oh, okay, cool. So what's, she was from a town in Idaho. And I was like, oh, so what's that like out there? And blah, blah, blah. So we start talking, and we hang out with her and my friend pretty much the whole night. Next day, I come over again, and we watch Hot Rod, I think. I might have gotten those mixed up, but I'm pretty sure we watched Hot Rod the second night. She's going to watch this and correct me later. But I remember just being like head over heels for this girl, and we ended up making out that night. Not exactly encouraging that behavior, but after that, I was like, I don't want this girl to think I'm just, messing around. I want to go and take her on a date now. So I asked her out, but here's the problem. I had literally $18 in my bank account at that time. I was donating plasma to pay for the few bills that I did have, mainly food at that time. She agreed to dinner, and then we lived in the same apartment complex, and they'd given us 2 free movie tickets. So I was like, all right, cool. We'll go to dinner, and then we'll use our free movie tickets. Which, looking back, that probably looked a little cheap. Like, hey, you have a free movie ticket, I have a free movie ticket. Let's use them at the same time. So we decided we were going to go see The Maze Runner. We both didn't really care for it at all. Night of the date comes on, and I was stoked to take her out. We walked out over to dinner. It was like a 10-minute walk, so it wasn't too bad. We were sitting there and eating. It was breakfast for dinner was what we had, because it was a breakfast place that so it was kind of like Denny's or IHOP. And I remember ordering so carefully because I knew I only had $18 in my bank account. So I remember I got like the $5, I don't even remember, I know it was around $5 or $6. She ordered something that was about $7. I remember being like, oh my goodness. It came out to like $16, I remember. So I was like, okay, it's going to be, tap water and ice cubes for the next couple days till I get another paycheck. We're sitting there eating. This is probably like 3/4 of the way through the date. And at this point, like, things are going really, really well. And I was enjoying, like, just kind of hanging out. Super chill girl, really easy to talk to. Like, we just had a good time. At one point, while she was talking, it looked like this is going to sound weird, it looked like somebody was closing a curtain over the left field of my vision. So I noticed it kind of steadily at first. The only way I can describe it is if you took your hand and just slowly went like this. And I remember thinking, that's not a normal thing, but I'm going to ignore it and keep eating because I didn't want to ruin the date. Well, this continues and continues and continues. And I remember at one point going to scratch my head just to see what would happen. And once I got to like this point, my arm disappeared. And I was like, also not normal. So I'm scratching my head, and I started kind of going like this, but trying to be like nonchalant, which I sucked at, because eventually she goes, are you okay? And I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. So I said as calmly as I could, yeah, I think I'm just going blind in my left eye. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm actually kind of freaking out right now. And she's like, do you want to go to the hospital or something? And I was like, oh, no, it's fine. Like, we'll finish dinner. And at this point, we were pretty much done. So we get up, and sure enough, I can't see anything over here. And so I called a family friend while we're walking out who's an optometrist. And I described to him what was going on. And he was like, okay, you need to get yourself to an ER right now because it sounds like your retina is detaching. I remember we were standing on this main road, and I could see the road that goes to the hospital on this main road to my left, and to my right was Danielle. And I remember thinking this out, like, I go to the ER, the date's going to be over, there's no way she'll ever go out with me again, which I mean, let's be real, at this point, why would she go out anyway? Like, I turned halfway into Helen Keller during that date. I turned to Danielle and I was like, we're just gonna keep going. And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, it'll work itself out. So I told the optometrist, like, okay, I appreciate it. I didn't go. We go back to her apartment because her roommate had to drive us to the theater because I didn't have a car. And she didn't at the time have a car either, although she brought hers from home a couple weeks later. So her roommate drives us to the movie theater, and we get to the movie theater, and it turns out that somehow her movie ticket and a $20 bill that she said she brought with her every time she went on a date in case something went wrong, and the guy didn't pay, which I didn't find out until later, had fallen out of her pocket at some point. So she didn't have the movie ticket. Well, I didn't have the money to pay for her movie ticket. I had $1 in my bank account, but I had my free movie ticket. She ended up having to pay for her movie ticket with her debit card. The movie goes on, and throughout the movie, my vision slowly comes back again. The curtain's been opened, right? So we leave the movie. We walk about a mile home in the cold. We got back, and I went to kiss her goodnight, and she like turned her head and kind of darted, and I was like, okay. After that, at that point, I was like, is everything cool? She was like, I think we'd be better off just as friends. And I was like, okay. And she's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't think this is something that would work out between us. And I was like, okay, I respect that. You know, I'm sorry about tonight again. I really appreciate your time. And she's like, yeah, you know, I had a good time. And I was like, okay, super. Like I said, she's like the sweetest girl ever. So she was like, I had a good time. And I went back to my apartment. My roommates were like, how'd it go? And I was like, well, it went. So that was our first date. How it ended up working out between us later on is a whole nother story. If you got a crazy date story, please share it. Just know that no matter how bad your date is, you might end up marrying her still. Because I sure did, and I'm so glad I did. So, I love this country. So I realized after I finished editing this video, by the way, you're just jumping around different points in my hotel room as I have no place to put my phone. Before you were on the windowsill. Anyway, I never actually explained what happened, like why I went blind. So I didn't find out until 8 months later. I'm sitting in a disease class I had to take in college. And we ended up talking about something called an ocular migraine. And we learned that the symptoms were blindness in one eye that's painless and temporary with no headache. And as soon as my teacher said that, I was like, oh my gosh. And I raised my hand and I kind of quickly explained what I just explained to y'all. And he was like, yeah, that sounds like that. And then I went to an optometrist for a yearly visit and I told him the same story. And he was like, that's straight up sounds like an ocular migraine. So, but here's the best part. They said it's usually caused by high levels of stress and high hormonal imbalances and fluctuations in hormones and things like that. So I guess you could say I was literally blinded by love. Thanks for watching.